Partygate, accusations of sexism, and no ideas how to support the badly battered consumers. Shortly before the landmark local elections in Great Britain, the headlines speak all, or almost all, against Boris Johnson. Today's vote is considered an important mood test for the Prime Minister. Should his Conservative Party get a bad result, internal pressure on Johnson is likely to increase again. The affairs surrounding lockdown parties in Downing Street, the seat of government, and the corrupt Tory MP Owen Paterson, who had all too obviously lobbied for a company, have changed the political climate. Johnson's Tories have trailed Labour in the polls since the scandals made headlines. The British Prime Minister may have benefited somewhat from the war in Ukraine, but that couldn't make up for the loss of reputation and much more. Johnson has already been fined in a Partygate case, making him the first Prime Minister to break the law while in office. Now, even one scandal is mixed up with another. At the end of 2020, a fun prize for the Sexist of the Year is said to have been awarded at a Christmas party in Downing Street, as the newspaper Sunday Times recently reported. You might have heard in one of my videos about this. The Tories' sexism problem became even bigger shortly before the local elections. The country is still outraged by allegations by anonymous Conservatives in the Mail on Sunday that Angela Rayner, deputy leader of the opposition Labour Party, had deliberately used her legs to distract Johnson, who was sitting opposite her in Parliament, behind two dispatch boxes. Well, recently it became known that Tory MP Neil Parish had watched porn on his mobile phone in Parliament and he resigned. Finally, a Conservative that resigns. There are many sources of fire that the Conservatives are currently having to extinguish. Around 4,400 seats in almost 150 parishes and districts in England are up for election. About half of that is already in Labour hands. The Conservatives hold around 1,400 seats and are estimated to lose up to 800 of them. But even losing 300 seats would be bad as a result for the Tories. This would probably count as Johnson's personal defeat and would be an opportunity for his internal party critics to bring up the vote of confidence that had been put on hold because of the Ukraine war. The Prime Minister has now become a burden. Boris Johnson used to be a real electoral gainer, so to speak, but that's not the case anymore. In polls, he lags behind many cabinet members and also behind his party. The government is not only being criticized for its scandals, it is also finding no remedy for the cost of living crisis that is gripping the country. Energy costs have skyrocketed by a good 50%, as announced before Russia's war in Ukraine. Social security contributions have been raised, food is becoming more expensive. The government always points to good economic data and a record number of vacancies. But the economy had previously slumped more than elsewhere because of Brexit, even if they don't want to admit that. And due to strict immigration rules since leaving the EU, there is no one who would take on the open jobs anywhere. The only thing currently saving Johnson's job is that there is no one in his party who can replace him. The reputation of the Chancellor of Exchequer Rishi Sunak, who until recently was considered the most promising successor, well, also suffered considerably due to legal tax tricks by a super-rich wife. An important indicator of how heavy the expected losses for the Prime Minister weigh is the extrapolation to a nationwide proportion. If the Tories slip below the 30% mark, there is serious cause for concern. In recent polls, the Tories were 34%, Labour 40%. Elections are also held in Wales and Scotland, but there the Tories are traditionally considered, largely hopeless. And overall, it can get even more uncomfortable in the elections. Today as well, local councils are not elected in Northern Ireland like in the rest of the UK, but the regional parliament is being re-elected. O'Neill is the lead candidate for Sinn Féin. The party was once the political arm of the IRA, but on this April Day, the past shouldn't matter, at least not in O'Neill's speech, that she held a few days ago. Unite, that's what O'Neill is all about. Northern Ireland to merge with the Republic of Ireland, if she has her way before the end of this decade. But first she wants to win the election today. Her chances are pretty good. Sinn Féin is number one in the polls. If it works out, it would mark a turning point in Northern Ireland's history. With Sinn Féin, the First Minister would be a party that represents the Republican Catholic part of the population for the very first time. A humiliation for all those parties behind which the loyalist Protestant part of the population stand. First and foremost for the DUP, which won one seat more than Sinn Féin in Parliament in the 2017 election and thus won. This time it might be tight again. And no matter what the outcome, one thing is certain. Forming a government will be extremely difficult. Northern Ireland faces months of uncertainty and possibly violence. It's getting politically difficult above all because one principle is firmly anchored in the 1998 Good Friday Agreement. According to the Good Friday Agreement, which ended the Northern Ireland conflict for the time being, the two largest nationalist and unionist parties must share power, meaning probably Sinn Féin and the DUP. Whoever is in front gets the First Minister. But that's where the problem begins. The DUP withdrew its previous First Minister from the government in February because of the Brexit deal that Boris Johnson signed with the EU. Because the British Prime Minister removed the United Kingdom from the EU internal market and also the customs union, a solution had to be found for Northern Ireland. EU rules continue to apply in the region so that goods traffic between Northern Ireland and Ireland does not have to be checked. There is general agreement that there should be no hard border on the island. But the regulation negotiated by Johnson also means that the movement of goods between Great Britain and Northern Ireland will be checked. After all, goods that do not meet EU standards could reach Ireland, that means the EU via Northern Ireland. For the DUP and its supporters, this means nothing other than a split in the UK. Basically, the Prime Minister created a border in the Irish Sea. The DUP is asking Johnson to change the protocol. Until that happens, they don't want to be part of the Northern Ireland government. In practical terms, this means that the DUP should simply refuse to appoint its top candidate, Jeffrey Donaldson, as First Minister, or, depending on the outcome of the election, as Deputy First Minister. The DUP has chosen the Brexit dispute as its top issue in the election campaign. Donaldson says that's what concerns people the most, but opinion polls show otherwise. Far more than Brexit, the Northern Irish are driven by the cost of living crisis. So the gas prices and the real estate prices, which are all going up steeply at the moment. That's exactly what Sinn Féin candidate O'Neill focused her campaign on. She promises more housing, more financial support in response to rising prices, and more investment in healthcare. As for Brexit, Sinn Féin thinks the protocol isn't working too badly, a view shared by the majority of business groups in Northern Ireland. There are only demands to adjust some rules, but Brussels would have nothing against that either. For Johnson, a Sinn Féin win would be a problem that could only get bigger, because the party has the best chance of being at the forefront in the elections in Ireland and thus providing the Prime Minister, or the Taoiseach. The election may not take place until 2025, but the mere prospect of Sinn Féin taking the lead in both parts of the Irish island has alarmed London. This would increase the likelihood of a border poll, which Sinn Féin is aiming for. Such a referendum on the unification of Northern Ireland and Ireland can be called if a majority appears to be in favour. No wonder Johnson is preparing legislation that could overturn the Northern Ireland Protocol. He seems willing to prevent the impending disintegration of the United Kingdom at all costs, even if a breach of the Brexit Treaty would lead to a new dispute with the EU and possibly a trade war. And also with Belfast. After all, the majority in Northern Ireland voted to remain in the EU in the 2016 Brexit referendum. During the election campaign, O'Neill tried to ignore Brexit and everything that is driving the country apart. In her opinion, the everlasting majority of unionists is a thing of the past. And so her message is, all identities will find their place in a united Ireland. And I'm quite curious how this election will turn out. When you see this video, obviously in the morning, they have not even started voting, but I don't think that we will have the results for my video tomorrow already. I think it will take some time until all votes are counted, but as soon as I have the full picture, I will definitely give you my outside view on that one as well. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.